Abba Yahuwah, I just want to praise you, and I just want to thank you, my Father. I thank you for this day, Father. I thank you for that which you are doing in this hour. I thank you, my Father, because I just know that even when the enemy comes in like a flood, you will raise a standard against him. And I praise you and I thank you, my Father, because we are in a time when we are just about to cross into, we are just about to come into a new season. We are just about to come into a new month where we will be celebrating a time of feasts. And Abba, I just want to thank you for this time. And I want to thank you for these feasts that are ahead of us. And I want to thank you for that which you are going to do in this new season. I'm excited, Father, because I know that even though right now the world is, as I keep saying, spinning out of control, as we just see the spiraling, that it's deteriorating at a rapid speed. But Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you. That just like it's spoken in the book of Daniel, where it says that those that will be righteous, those that will do righteousness, and those that turn many back to righteousness will shine as bright as the firmaments of the heavens. They will be like the stars. And so, Abba Yahuwah, this is why we are going into dark times, because it's only in the darkness when the moon can shine its light. It's only in the darkness when the stars can shine their light. You cannot see the light of any star when it is bright with the sun. And so, Father, I know that you are raising up a remnant of people in this hour. And this remnant of people will be raised up in order to be able to, in the days ahead, be those that need to shine bright with your presence, with your glory. We are preparing for a time of glory. And I thank you, my Father, that is why you need to shake us. That is why, as the world is shaking, you need to shake your people. You are shaking your people into position. You are shaking your people in line to be able to come in line with your purposes, your plans, and your ways. And I thank you, my Father, because this month of Elul has been a month of where truly you have been exposing the hearts. You have been revealing our hearts to us in order to show us what is there. And we want to be those that can be obedient to your commands. Because your commands, how are we going to be able to stand in the end without knowing your commands? Because as it was right in the Garden of Eden, where they had one command, and that was what they needed to obey. And this is exactly what it is now. We are now coming back to a place of where you are raising up a remnant of people to return back to the Garden of Eden, to be obedient, to be a remnant that will be set apart, cleaned, and that will be able to be those that will be able to carry your presence to a world that desperately needs to see you. And so, my Father, I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for your faithfulness in being able to bring us these teachings, Father. I know that they're not easy. I know that you speak very very straight messages and very powerful messages that will come forth from my mouth, because I am only a messenger. And so, Father, I surrender myself to you right now, and I ask you, Father, that you be the one to come and put the words in my mouth that I am to speak. Let me not speak anything that comes from my own mind. Let me not speak anything that comes from myself. but let me open my mouth and speak the words that you will put in my mouth in order for me to speak. Father, I pray that you will come and circumcise my mouth with your coal of fire, so that it will only speak with your authority and your power, not anything of my own, that I will truly just only be the postman to deliver a message. And so I thank you, Father, that to you will be all glory, and that you will be the one to be able to speak to your people, the very oracles that will come from your heart, to be able to open up this word so that we may have the deeper revelation and the deeper understanding of your word, to walk out your ways and be pleasing to you in everything that we do. That we will not only just be hearers of the word, but that we will be doers of the word. That you give us eyes to see, that you give us ears to hear, that you give us a heart, mind, will, emotions to be able to understand and put into practice. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I praise you and I thank you for this word, and that you alone come and have your way. I praise and I thank you for this in Yeshua's name. Amen. Praise Abba. And so last week we were listening to quite a powerful message that the Father has spoken. It's my favorite word that I use. It's a hectic message. Hectic because we heard many things that some people do not preach from a pulpit, that some people do not speak about. And the problem is that we are living in a world right now where truth is not really being spoken. And if truth is not really being spoken, then how are we going to change? Because it's only when truth is spoken that truly there can be an accountability to people to stand and say, this is what the word says, this is what is written in this word, and this is the final authority. Because when the time comes, we cannot have an excuse and say, I didn't know. Because the word is going to be what will judge us. Yeshua is the word, and he has already given us this word in this Bible, and the word in the end will judge us. And that is why we are in the hour now, more than ever, where the word needs to be spoken. And if the word has been closed up to us and the word has not been revealed to us, it's now the hour to have our eyes opened, our ears opened, to have the word being opened up to us so that we can understand what is pleasing to the Father, what is not pleasing to the Father, so that we can be able to become a people, a priesthood, that will be pleasing to him, because he's looking for a tabernacle that he wants to dwell in. And he cannot dwell in a tabernacle that will continue to be defiled. He wants to dwell in a tabernacle that is going to be set apart unto him. And so that is why, as we are working through these commands, we are looking at the commands, tying them up to the 7 days of creation, because that is a foundation that has been given to us. That is the foundation. He's given us the 7 days of creation as our foundation to understand. We cannot argue and say, well, we don't need to keep a Sabbath, because 6 days he worked, and on the 7th day he rested. So it's been put in creation. And when we understand each day of creation, and we understand what was the significance of what was brought about on that day of creation, and when we line it up to what he was doing in terms of the plagues, and we understand that the plagues was, again, he was releasing his people out of bondage. So if we do not understand the plagues, we do not understand what we are still in bondage to. Because the plagues is what was the gods that they had in Egypt that was keeping them captive and bound. And there's many people that have been saved, but they are still bound to Egypt and Egypt's ways because of the gods that come out of Egypt. And this is why we have to look at this in detail, in order to understand that by the time we get to the command, so when we understand this entire book of Exodus, we understand that the Father was having to bring a people that he was going to have to reveal himself to. And the commands were something that he wanted to write on the tablets of our hearts, and not something that was going to be put on tablets of stone. And so for it to be written on the tablets of our hearts, it means that this was something that we need to walk out. And now, where are we all these thousands of years later? Exactly like it was in the Garden of Eden, to turn around and say, well, you know what? We can just not keep these commands, and we can just, make them seem not important. Let's make other things look important. Because at the end of the day, let us not keep the commands. Let us make other things more important than keeping the commands. Because that's exactly what Satan did with Eve, to make her believe you will not surely die. You are not going to surely die if you're going to be able to disobey this command. You're not surely going to die. And so that is why I say that there's going to be a great surprise when it comes to the end, and we're going to have to be able to enter the city and eat from the tree of life. If he did not allow them to stay in the garden after they broke the command, and he did not allow them to stay in the garden, I don't think he's going to allow all these people to come into his eternal reign when there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, when the people have continued to be rebellious and stood against him. Nowhere in the Bible do we see that there is a continuation of where we can just continue to rebel and he's just going to love us and accept us. He will continue to love us, yes. He will always love us, just like we love our children. But we cannot continue to allow our children to be disobedient, rebellious children, because we will correct and we will discipline. And so it would be ludicrous for us to be able to think that our Heavenly Father will not have tolerated it from the beginning. And we see the pattern throughout the Bible, even with his own chosen people. Sent them prophet after prophet after prophet, and they continue to rebel. Sends his Son now, and then we continue to rebel and think that it's going to be okay for us. Because now we have even less excuse. Because now we have not only received his Son, but we have received the Ruach of Yahuwah. That's the one who will lead and teach, which brings us back to the Father, because it's Abba Yahuwah's Ruach HaKodesh. It's his set-apart spirit that has been put in us. And now for what reason do we have now to say, I will continue to be rebellious and do it my way? I can't see that. I can't see that this is going to be acceptable. And yet we seem to have this understanding because of our church mentality that once saved, always saved. But this is the deception of exactly what the enemy wants to sow into our lives, to make us be about everything else, be religious, be about everything. But whatever you do, don't be obedient to the Father and to his word. So be very religious about whatever you're doing. Do all your good works. Go out there and do your good works. But whatever you do, don't come in line. And that's why it's interesting. The minute you start wanting to return back to his commands and to his ways, your own brothers and sisters in the faith that were with you in church, that were with you in cell groups, they will now be the ones to persecute you. Your own will then stand against you, because now you want to stop your wayward, rebellious ways. So do you see, when we are all in this faith together, as we got saved, there was no persecution. We all embrace each other, we all love each other, and we all one in this faith. But let you step out of the mold. Let you start to question this Bible. Let you start to question your faith. Question the fact that they are misinterpreting the Bible. Let you start to question the faith that they've given you for centuries. Then your persecution will start. Let you just start to walk a walk that is to become set apart to one to keep his commands. You will even be judged by people telling you that you are holier than thou, because that's not done. You are now trying to come under the law. And that's why I'm saying there is a message that needs to go forth of the understanding that we cannot continue being in Babylon with a mixed seed and everything goes. And that is why it's very stern. How many times it tells us in Revelation 17, Revelation 18, telling us, come out of Babylon. And he didn't go to all the trouble of having to go through these plagues and giving us his commands and giving us his precepts and his ordinances because it was just a good idea. He's gone through all of this because he's wanting us to be able to come into obedience to him. And he wants a remnant. He's always had a people that are to serve him. And even when his people disobeyed, as they did in the wilderness, the tests were there to try them. The tests were there to be able to be their tests in the wilderness, to try them, to see whether they would be obedient to him or not. And so in our lives, we are being tested to see whether we will obey him or not. So we continue tonight as we continue our message, where we are looking at the message of whoredom, where we looked at whoring, and we understood that whoring is to prostitute one's body, to lust for another, to give oneself to unlawful sexual intercourse, to commit fornication, to be given to idolatry. So understand, there is a physical whoring and there is a spiritual whoring. And that was the Father's biggest gripe with the house of Israel. And that is why we have to cover this in detail. Because Father doesn't take very well to whoring. And he doesn't take very well to idolatry. And that is why we've got oppressing spirits. And that is why we've got strongholds in our life. Because of these very spirits, of these unclean spirits that have been on this earth, that is coming from these Nephilim giants that died, that we explained all of that 3 weeks ago. And that is why we are being oppressed. We're being suppressed. We're being tormented by these spirits. And the only way that we're going to overcome them is when the truth comes out from his word. Because it says we overcome by the word of our testimony, by the blood of Yeshua. Because we have to overcome, because the word is what we need to stand by, because it's the word that sets us free. It's only the word that's going to set us free. And that is what really is so sad, because there's so little word that's being preached today. People listen to things, but they don't give them word. It's got to be word-based. Whatever we listen to, there must be word-based. Otherwise, it's just nice, fancy messages that just puffs us up and gives us a good feeling in our flesh. We need word, because it's the word that sets us free. And so it says idolatry, to worship idols. So we have to understand, what does it mean to worship idols? That is whoring. To permit oneself to be drawn away by another. So what do we allow in our lives to draw us away from the Father and His presence? And we're drawn away into idolatry, to act as a harlot, to become a harlot, to become a whore, to become a prostitute. And that's what we see that has happened in the body of Messiah, where we prostitute ourselves, where we've prostituted ourselves, especially when it comes to people that are teaching the word, that have become prostitutes. They're prostituting the Father's word for gain. And we're going to look at this a little bit more in detail today. To indulge in unlawful lust. So to indulge in unlawful lust, and that's why we got to go deeper to understand, what does it mean to indulge in unlawful lust? To practice idolatry, to commit fornication, which is a harlot, which is a whore. And so we're going to start by being able to see that we have to understand that whoredom is also spiritual and not just physical. So there's spiritual whoredom. So there's a physical prostitute, but there's a spiritual prostitute. And this is why we started looking at this, because we have to understand that whoring, which is what is everything that has to do with Revelation chapter 17 and 18, this is the whore of Babylon. And this is what's going to be in these last days. And it's not going to be in these last days. It's already in these last days. This whore of Babylon is rife. And it's taking more and more people into its kingdom. And there's only two kingdoms. It's either the kingdom of light or the kingdom of darkness. It's either truth or it's either a lie. And you can't have in between, because what is Babylon? Babylon is confusion. That's what Babylon means. That's why he says, come out of Babylon, come out of confusion. Because what is Babylon? But the word Babylon means confusion. And what is that confusion? That confusion is the mixed seed. It's the mixed seed that we are eating from. So it's the little bit of truth mixed with a little bit of lie. And this is the very mixed seed that comes, because this Babylon comes from the Tower of Babel that was already built then. And what is it? Because Babylon, Babel, it's the word Babel, which is the confusion, by mixing, by mingling. So do you understand? When we mix and we mingle with the confusion, and this is what the enemy is trying to do. He brings you a little bit of truth with a little bit of lie, and we accept it and we mingle it all together, and then we think we stand so right. And so this is where the problem comes in. So it's where we've mixed ourselves, because it comes from Nimrod. And remember, what was Nimrod that built the Tower of Babel? He was into rebellion. He was valiant. He was a valiant man. He was a mighty one. He was a strong man. So do you see, Babylon brings strong man in our life. It brings strongholds in our life. Why? Because it comes from its origin, that comes from that rebellion that is from Nimrod's time already. And these are the strong men, strongholds that come into our lives, because he was a mighty man. He was a strong man. So do you see, we got to bind the strong man. We got to bind that rebellion that is in us. So And what was he? He was a hunter. So what do you think these demonic spirits are doing? They will hunt us down. They will not stop until they destroy us by hunting us down. And it's not difficult for them to do it. Because all they need to do is bring us into this confusion. They just got to bring us into Babylon to erect this tower that we are trying to go to the Father in our own system, in our own religious system. So we have actually erected many Babylonian towers, in Babel towers in our lives, by trying to find by thinking we're going to the Father in a mixed seed, rebellious way. Do you understand when you now start to see the bigger picture? My goodness, this is a revelation that the Father is giving me right now. I just happen to have had my book of my Genesis book on the table here. And he's talking to me about Babel, and I wanted to go see, am I saying the right thing? Am I reading? Am I saying, I know it's confusion, but I wanted to see more. How do I just open the page? This is an entire book. This is the entire book of Genesis. How do I open the page exactly on where it's speaking about Nimrod? Exactly. And now the Father is giving us the deeper revelation. Because this is He that is wanting to give revelation. This is Him saying, it's the same strong man of the spirit that came from Nimrod, that was rebellious, that was a hunter, that was a flesh being. He wanted to be able to reach the heavens through a tower. So do you see how there is a rebellious people? They don't follow the Father's way, nor the Father's command, nor His order, nor His statutes, nor His ordinances, and they are trying to go into the heavens in their own rebellious way. Wow. This to me is right now an eye-opening revelation that I myself have just received. Because this is what we're doing. And that is why He's saying, come out of Babylon. Because you will be sucked in by this whore of Babylon that is sitting on many waters with all these water demon spirits that are going to keep you captive, thinking that you are so holy. Yet you are in mixed seed. Because Babylon means confusion by mixing, mingle, confuse. To mix oneself, to mix. So do you see? This is exactly where we are. So we mix the set apart with the profane. We mix the truth with the lie. And then we find our own way to try get to the Father. And it's only by His grace, because we have Yahushua, that we are still able to experience His presence. But a lot of things, I won't even say it's His presence. I would say that there's a counterfeit. There's a lot of counterfeit going on. A lot of flesh things going on that we've deemed as being the Ruach of Yahuwah. That it's not the Ruach. It's a flesh thing. And that is why we need to get back to the truth. So we are going to start reading in 1 John. Let us start in 1 John chapter 2 from verse 15. And it says, do not love the world. Do not love this Babylon and its system. Do not love the world, nor that which is in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So if you truly want to carry the love of the Father, how can you love this world and everything that this world has to offer if all you're doing is living for what this world has to give you? You cannot have the love of the Father in your heart, because this world is wasting away, and this world is not our dwelling place. We need to become more and more detached from the world, more and more coming out of the things of this world and becoming more and more submitting and surrendering our way to Him. Because all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. So do you see what ends up happening? We have this lust of the flesh. We're drawn by the things that this world has got to give us. We're drawn by the glitter and the glamour and the everything else that this world has to give us. We're drawn by these things. That's why the devil is always putting all these things in our lives in order to be able to give us more of what this world has to give us, to take us further and further away from the Father. Less is more. So at the end of the day, the more we're sometimes deprived of things, the more we're going to seek the Father. So sometimes in the load-shedding world at the moment, especially when there's nights where it's darkness, this is a time when people can now come on their knees and start to pray and seek the Father. So it's not always bad to not have the things of this world. It's only when we really go in our dark stages that we really seek the Father deeper. And the world passes away. So there we go. We know that the world is going to pass away. The world passes away. And the lust of it. But the one doing the desire of Eloah remains forever. So who is going to remain forever? Only the one who's going to do His will. Only the one who is not following their own agenda. Still trying to raise themselves up, still trying to be seen, still trying to be known, still trying to be able to say, look, I've achieved this by, I'm now this great sports star. I'm this great actor. I am this great, we're going to look at these things, these sports stars that have become idols. Or these actors that have become idols. And people are idolizing these people. And what we don't understand is that we, in the end, then crave for that attention. People make idols out of their pastors, out of their, out of prophets, out of whatever. We are not to make idols out of anybody. Because at the end of the day, the only one that is to get all the glory is Him. And that is why, it's so difficult for we that preach the word. It's so difficult for us to be able to stay in that place of humility, to keep coming to the place of saying, Father, help me to stay humble. Because it's so difficult as it is already to just try walk this walk and stay and hold on to the hem of His garment. And what is it that comes into the life of men and women of Yahuwah that preach the word, that are out there? Eventually, pride gets the better of them, just like it did with Hasatan. And why? Because you want to receive the praises of man. You want to receive what man is going to give you to make you feel better. Now understand something. If you have not dealt with your rejection, if you have not dealt with your insecurities, if you have not dealt with those things in your life, then those are the things that eventually will destroy you, because you crave for that. And then you start to preach to get the praises of man. You start to preach and you start to speak to be seen by man. And that is why it becomes so dangerous. And that is why we have to stay in the humble place to be able to say, Father, please, let it be about you. Let it be about you. Let it always be about you. Let them hear you. Because He is the only one that has to get all the glory.
And that is why I'm saying to the Father, I'm working at the moment amongst a community of people, that there is so much brokenness, that I sit and I say, Father, it's going to take hundreds of counselors to try and come to the depth of these people's hearts, to try and help them from the deep wounds and hurt that is there. And I say, Father, it cannot be done by man. It can only be done by you. It can only be done by you. Can you be the one to touch them? Because if Peter walked and his shadow healed the sick, if Yeshua came into a place and demons would run and people would be healed. But now, these are the thoughts that will go through my mind. How are we going to handle it? If we have not been delivered and healed, how are we going to handle it? When the days are going to be so dark, and say, for example, you come into a room and your presence is going to heal a bunch of people. How are you going to deal with that if you have not dealt with those things in your life where you start to think you've arrived and you are somebody? That test is a test that I don't even want to think, because that's why Peter was tested as severely as what he was. Because it's Peter that's spoken of that says his shadow healed the sick. Paul prayed over handkerchiefs and aprons and people were healed. But how much did those two men go through? Then you understand why Paul would turn around and say, well, can you just remove this cup from me? This thorn in my flesh. No, Yeshua spoke and said, remove the cup from me. Paul spoke and said, can you just remove this thorn in my flesh? And he had to have a thorn in his flesh. Why? I really believe that the thorn in his flesh was to keep him humble. Because Paul was doing such great and mighty things for the Father. And so sometimes the Father allows us to go through such difficulties where we're constantly in a place of being broken. And man is constantly having to break us down so that we can stay in that place of humility. Because the day that he's going to, I want you to think about this, because this is coming, people. It's coming. Imagine if the Father puts his fullness of his glory on you. Are you ready to handle what is going to come? When people will grab onto you and they will be healed, and then they will want to worship you, and you are going to have to say, it's not me. Just like they said, silver and gold have we none. Pick up your mat and walk. Nobody needed to even know what their name was. What was important was the name of Yeshua had to be remembered. And my mouth is speaking these things right now. It's not even in this my scriptures. It's not part of what I was supposed to speak. But I think this is the awareness of what the Father's trying to bring to us this evening. To say, you've got to understand that this is the very thing that made Hasatan fall. This is the very thing that made this Nimrod become great, because he wanted to be like Yahuwah. And this is why we've seen so many men and women of Yahuwah falling. Because of pride. And so we just have to come to a place of understanding. We cannot love this world. We cannot love to want to be, to have power, to want to love these things that the world is going to offer us, We have to be broken in ourselves. We have to humble ourselves. Little children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard, the anti-Messiah is coming. Even now, many anti-Messiahs have come. This is how we know that it is the last hour. And so, this is what we're looking at in terms of being able to see that in 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 to 18, we are not to be lovers of this world. In James chapter 4, let's go look at James. James chapter 4 from verse 4. And it says, so let's just read a little bit before from verse 2. You desire and you do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. So we murder because of what? Because of jealousy. So when we have envy and jealousy in our lives, we murder others because we have envy and we have jealousies. That's why he says we murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight and you do not possess because you do not ask. Because instead you covet what somebody else has, and therefore you become jealous, and then you become envious, and then you will murder with your mouth. And you do not possess because you do not ask. You ask and you do not receive because you ask evilly. So do you see, the Father knows your heart. The Father knows why He hasn't given us what He's given us, and that's why I say to Him, it's the same thing that I ask Him in terms of finances. Father, let the finances not be given to me if I am not going to be faithful in knowing how to handle the finances. Because if you're going to be given all this amount of finances and you have not been taught to be a good steward of those finances, then this is what's happened. When we look and we see, if we look at nations, when there's been a change of, for example, take our nation, for example, a people that were oppressed in this nation. And now there came a change of, it's the change of regulations that came, the change of presidency that we received. And with this came a new set of laws. Because the people that became the leaders of the nation had been deprived in their lives and had never dealt with that which they were deprived of, when they became the leaders, they abused their power and they enriched themselves. And if you look at most of what has happened in the nations of Africa, this is what has happened. Once the leader comes into power, they impoverish the people and they enrich themselves. Why? Because all of a sudden they find themselves with power and with money. And when they have the power and the money, they abuse it because of the issues that they come from in their own lives. And this is why I'm saying, if we haven't learned to be, if we've laid down the love of money, if we've laid down the lust of the flesh, then when the Father brings the finances, then you understand what to do with it because it's about Him and His kingdom. But if you have not laid that down in your life, then you will use it for your own evil purposes. And that's why He says, you have not because you ask evilly, because He knows He knows the intent of the heart. And He's not going to give you that power. He's not going to allow you to self-destruct. He's not raising you up in that place yet because He knows that it will destroy you. And look at what He says. You ask evilly in order to spend it on your pleasures. So do you see why then you give it, you have this finances that comes. So you'll have these people, children of the Father, these great men and women of Yahuwah, that come into this wealth, and then all of a sudden, they will use it for their pleasures. And this is where the danger comes in. Because the Father is not giving it because it's supposed to be for our pleasures. The Father is giving it because it's supposed to be for His kingdom and for His people. It's supposed to be able to give to His people. That's what they did in the book of Acts. They brought the finances to the apostles, and the apostles distributed it to where there was need. And that's why He'll say in verse 4, adulterers, adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world, so you see, this is how we go into idolatry, into adultery, into whoring. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Yahuwah? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Yahuwah. So do you see, many times He's not going to give us the things that He's supposed to give us because He knows the intent of the heart is going to be evil. Because it's going to be able to get the person to self-destruct. Because instead of the people using it for the Father's kingdom, it's being used for their own selfish pleasures. Or do you think that the Scripture speaks to no purpose? Does the Spirit which dwells in us intensely crave unto envy? So you see, envy is a terrible sin. When you envy what somebody else has, that itself is a sin. Because it births a lot of evil within our hearts. But He gives greater favor because this, He says, Yahuwah resists the proud, but He gives favor to the humble. So then subject yourselves to Yahuwah, resist the devil, and he shall flee from you. Draw near to Yahuwah, and He shall draw near to you. Cleanse hands, sinners, and cleanse the hearts, you double-minded. So you see, you cannot have one foot with the world and one foot with Yahuwah. You cannot do that. And so He turns around and He says, lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Master, and He shall lift you up. So when you remain humble before Him, don't be one that wants to raise yourself up out of the Father's timing. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of Yahuwah. And when the time is right, He will lift you up. Brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against a brother and judges his brother speaks against the Torah and judges Torah. And if you judge Torah, you are not a doer of the Torah, but a judge. There is one lawgiver and judge. Who is able to save and to destroy? Who are you to judge another? So this is why we need to stay in a humble place. We need to understand that all of us have our weaknesses, all of us have our faults, all of us go through what we go through. We need to stay humble before the Father. So we need to understand that there is a physical adultery, there is a spiritual adultery, there is a spiritual fornication. And that is why, if we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 6, let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and we are going to read from verse 9. And we need to look at some of these things. Do you not know that the unrighteous shall not inherit the reign of Yahuwah? Do not be deceived. So do you see, we seem to have this understanding that people can just behave as they want. They don't keep His commands. They're into idolatry. They're into whoredom, spiritual idolatry. They're into all of this. But man, we are just going to enter into the reign of the heavens. But I don't understand where this comes from, because in this New Testament, I tell you, the more I read this Bible, the more I cringe. The more I read in depth these scriptures, the more I have to humble myself before the Father. As even today, as I was looking at some of these words, I was thinking, oh, my Father, no wonder you are doing great introspection in us. Because when you really look at these words, then you think to yourself, these people will not inherit the kingdom. But I can pride myself thinking, oh my goodness, I make the grade. No, I don't make the grade if I start to compare myself to what some of these things mean. Then I've missed the mark already. And that is why I need to be able to cry out to the Father. And that is why I need Him to be able to come and deliver me from these strongholds that hold me captive. And that is why I need to continue to repent. And that is why I need to continue to have this word before me, for me to understand that if I have this word and I read this word and I hear this word, then when I behave in this way, the word is going to come up to me and say, do you remember, this is what it says, what a covetous person is, or what a reviler is, or what a swindler is, and what a drunkard is, and what a thief is. Just be reminded of that. And then when you want to go into some kind of flesh nature way, because the devil is wanting to take you in that direction, you start having to resist. So listen to what it says. Do you not know that the unrighteous shall not inherit the reign of Elohim? Do not be deceived. Neither those who whore. So there you go. Everything that we discuss under whoring, nobody that is committing whoring, whether it be physical whoring or spiritual whoring, is going to inherit the kingdom. They will not inherit the kingdom. And the problem is, we don't understand whoring. Why? Because we've become religious. And now we've got all this religious people doing all these great things for the Father in their religious ways, thinking that they're pleasing the Father, yet they're prostituting themselves, they're whoring themselves by being able to sell His gospel, to sell things, to do all of this, and yet they are whoring. And they're using the gospel for gain. It says, no idolater, nor adulterer, nor a whore will inherit the kingdom, nor an Ephraimite, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor greedy of gain, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers shall inherit the reign of Elohim. Now, this is serious, because we can be so good in one area, but we can fall in another. Now, if this Bible is telling you that those who whore will not inherit the kingdom, then we better understand whoredom. Those who are idolatrous will not inherit the kingdom, then we better understand idolatry. No adulterers, then we better understand adultery. They will not inherit the kingdom. I don't care what all they've done. I don't care if they've built the biggest church. I don't care if they've saved 1 million souls. If this is what they were, the Bible says they will not inherit the kingdom. That's why Joshua said, many will come in that day and say to me, Joshua, I cast out demons in your name. I prophesied in your name. They were doing mighty works in His name. He says, depart from me, you children of iniquity. You have practiced lawlessness. Your wickedness. You've done wickedness. You are without laws. You have made your own way of how to reach me. You've built your own Babylonian Babel tower to get to me. So we've already looked at whoring that covers adultery, that covers idolatry, because whoring covers idolatry, covers adultery, and covers idolatry. So that's why we've got to go a little bit deeper. Nor thieves. What is a thief? Now listen to this. This just blew me away. Thieves. It's G2812. Kleptus. Kleptus. An embezzler. Listen to a thief. A false teacher. False teachers who do not care to instruct men, but abuse their confidence for their own gain. That is a thief. Oh my goodness, I tell you, this is when I looked this. So they're seen as thieves. So it says, do not steal. They are a thief. They're stealing. Now, do you understand how deep this goes? Do you understand why I'm saying to you that there's going to be few? Narrow's the road that leads to life, and few find it. Why? Because the more we go into this word, you see, I don't understand. I don't know what Bible some people read that can just preach certain messages that give the people this understanding that we have a free-for-all and we just need to believe in Jesus and we've got a ticket to heaven and everything is fine. I don't know what Bible they read. Because this I'm reading now, I'm not even reading the foundational covenant of the Old Testament, which is what they call the Old Testament. I'm reading the renewed covenant. And he is saying, nor thieves, no one, neither those who whore, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor Ephraimites, nor homosexuals. Ephraimite and homosexuals, Ephraimite are those, it's all to do with the sexual sin of what's going on at the moment, where I will say that I'm a man, but I'm a woman, and yet I will change my sexual stand, and it's all to do with that. And homosexuality is homosexuality. If a man lies with a man, he's committing homosexuality. If a woman lies with a woman and does whatever sexual thing, it's known as homosexuality. No homosexual will inherit the kingdom. But now we want to rewrite the Bible so that we don't have these scriptures. But then people are so quick to want to judge a homosexual. Now they point fingers at homosexuals. But the Father puts us all in a category. He's not going to sit and say, well, just because they were in the homosexual act. So all these people will stand up against all these homosexuals because their sin is visible. But now he says, no thieves. And when we get to thieves, like I said to you, an embezzler. False teachers who do not care to instruct men, but abuse their confidence for their own gain. That is a thief. That is serious. We can put a lot of people in that category, but yet they will be the very people speaking up maybe against a homosexual. But what they don't understand, the judgment is coming upon them in the fact that they best look at these words, which is where I was sitting today and saying, oh, my Father, please have mercy on my soul. Then there is nor greedy for gain. So what is greedy for gain? Covetous. A covetous person. G4123. Pleonektes. It's pleonektes. One eager to have more, especially what belongs to others, greedy for gain. They are covetous. So they covet what someone has got, and they want more. They want what somebody else has got, and so they're not happy with what they have. They want more. If I just look and see what women are doing, they're not satisfied with the way that they look. So they covet to look like someone else. And now they will go and have all the plastic surgery, and they'll have all the Botox, and they will have all these things done to themselves because they're not happy with the way the Father created them. What have you done? What are we doing? Because we have issues within ourselves. So now we will look at this movie star, or we look at these women on magazines, and we look at these movie stars and these idols that we will have. And then all of a sudden, we got to go and change our whole appearance because we're not happy with the way the Father created us. Now we need to go and have Botox, and we need to go and have facelifts, and we need to put false eyelashes, and we got to put all this stuff. For what? It's vanity. Vanity is a sin. And if you're not satisfied with the way Father created you, then this is a problem. And then in the meantime, it's all about an image, which is in the end going to get men to stumble because you're trying to please who? Yourself? Or is it to please the people around you? Who are you doing it for? Ask yourself that question. Who must you make yourself up for? That is a problem. That is a big insecurity within the person that's still got to be dealt with. Drunkards, G3183, methusos, to be drunk, to get drunk, to drink well, to get tipsy. So even if you're tipsy, so just imagine, you're not drunk that you're falling over. People always think that drunkenness is someone that's falling over. If you're just as much tipsy, where you just have that one drink too much, and it's going to get to your head, and then you already start to get a little bit tipsy. The Bible said tipsy. The drunkard is not even going to enter the kingdom. But we don't want to lay down alcohol at all, because we say it's allowed. Well, let's just carry on and say Jesus turned water into wine. And now we make those excuses. Yeshua never turned any water into alcoholic beverage. Absolutely not. He came to be able to restore what the drunkenness that Adam brought into the world. So that is why the very first miracle that he made, the very first miracle that he performed, was to counteract the sin, the very first sin that came into the world through Adam. No, sorry, not Adam, through Noah. When Noah came out of the ark, planted his vineyards, and went and made his alcohol and got drunk. And then curses the son. And there comes the sin into the world with a bloodline. And Yeshua comes and restore it. So please do not come and tell me that drunkenness, that drinking alcohol is acceptable. That's why Abba Yahuwah never wanted it in his temple. He says it's unclean. If he never wanted it in his physical temple, I'm absolutely 100% sure he doesn't want it in your temple. So it doesn't help you to say, I don't eat pork. I don't eat anything unclean because this is my temple. But then you allow the unclean alcohol into your body. So you got to be able to make sure that you don't mix the seed. If he doesn't want any unclean animal being sacrificed on his altar, I can tell you now that he doesn't want the alcohol either, because he very much said it to the priests. You will not bring anything of alcohol, no strong drink, no wine into my temple. as to make the difference between what is clean and unclean. So he calls it unclean. But now we will make excuse for it. Then he says revilers. So greedy for gain, no drunkards, no revilers. What is a reviler? A reviler is an abusive person. But then we think, abusive? It wasn't really explaining to me what a reviler is, because it just said reviler, abusive. So I thought, it's not really explaining. Let me go and do a little bit more of a search. Listen to what a reviling person is. One who criticizes. One who's always criticizing everything that someone does. One who's constantly criticizing. Everything is to be criticized. One who criticizes someone strongly or say unpleasant things to or about someone. So someone that is criticizing what someone is doing to someone else. Criticizing. Someone who's always criticizing what someone does. So no matter what the person does, it's never good. It's always criticism. That is a reviler. They will not inherit the kingdom. So you see, we can do all these outward things that we think we're doing to please the Father, but we can be a drunkard, we can be covetous, we can be a thief, we can be a reviler. We can use this mouth to criticize, to break down. So to criticize someone strongly or say unpleasant things to or about someone, to speak about someone or something in a very critical or insulting way. Wow. That one really got to me. I don't know about you, but that one really got to me. I thought, my Father, truly, we need to be cleaned up. When I read that, it really got to me. Because where we are at the moment, my goodness, in the world that we live in at the moment, we seem to criticize everything just about. So we've got to be very careful, because we don't go into words and we don't understand them. And so that's why when I went into this that says a reviler, abusive, I said, is it an abusive person, Father? What is a reviler? Is it an abusive person? Someone who abuses someone else. Now, that is what an abusive person is. Abusive person constantly criticizes someone. They do. They break them down horribly. Because they abuse the person in their way, because they pride themselves that only they can do right. Swindlers, an extortioner, a robber. That's an extortioner and a robber. That is a swindler. Shall not inherit the kingdom of Yahuwah. So if we are taking funds and we are, if we misuse it, we are doing extortion. We are a swindler. And so when I had a look at these, and I said, my Father, we really got to go deep in prayer. Because if we don't go into the word deeply, we are going to be, that's why there's going to be much gnashing of teeth. Where it says outside were those that were gnashing their teeth. Why were they gnashing their teeth? Because they really believed that they were going to be part of the kingdom, but they found themselves outside the kingdom. And that is why we need to go deep into these things, because if the Father says, you shall have no other idols before me, what is he referring to? And if we do not understand, idolatry is directly connected to whoredom, which is directly connected to what he was doing to say that in these last days there's going to be a dragon, a beast, and a false prophet that is going to spew out of his mouth these frog these frogs. This is these defiled spirits. What are these defiled spirits? They're these frogs. And they speak sweet things into our ears to make us believe that we stand so right before the Father. Just like Nimrod, that was gathering everybody and said, let us build a tower and let us get to the heavens. Let us get to the Father. There is a way that seems right unto man, but its way will end in death. And so we have made a lot of our own religious ways in how we are trying to please the Father, and thinking that we're pleasing to Him in our religious acts and our religious ways. And it's time to stop our acting and our religious ways, and it's time to come back to Him. Let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank You for this message, my Father. Wow. The deeper we go, the more we realize that we really do miss the mark. The more we realize that if we do not surrender ourselves completely to Your Ruach HaKodesh and allow Him to come and change our wicked hearts and our wicked ways, we cannot make this. And that is why we need to be those that need to be led by Your Ruach. And that is why we need to know the truth of Your word, so that when we start to trip in these areas where we were so accustomed to doing something because it's part of what we do, and we don't even think that we sin, we will have the Ruach of Yahuwah bringing these things to our remembrance to say, this, if you carry on doing this, you will not inherit the kingdom. Because this is the renewed covenant, when Yeshua has already resurrected, where this is being written and saying, people that continue to do this after they've received the Spirit of Yahuwah and they continue in these ways, they will not inherit the kingdom. And as we continue to read this passage, next week when we continue to read the passage, we will understand that we are not to join ourselves with no whore. So that is why He's saying, come out of all your idolatrous things, come out of this whore of Babylon, come out of your confusion and your mixed seed, so that you may know the truth and that the truth can set you free, so that you may truly walk on the straight and narrow path, because only few are going to find the narrow path. And so, my Father, I just want to thank You that I understand that this message is becoming more and more cutting to the very core of our bone of our being. But I thank You for Your revelation and Your truth, so that we may be those that change. I pray, my Father, please help us not to be able to be conceited, thinking that we stand right before You when we don't. But I pray, open up our spiritual ears and our eyes to truly get the revelation of the truth of this word, so that we may put it into practice. Help us, Father, to see these truths for what they are, so that we can start to change our lives. And so, Father, I pray, give us the grace, because without Your grace we cannot do this. We just need more of Your Ruach, Abba Yahuwah. I pray that You will bring Your Ruach fire upon our lives and burn out of us everything that is not of You. In Yeshua's name I pray this. Amen.